So good morning. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners as we get started on this session today on the lands on which we meet the Camaragal people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are in the room with us today or online having joined us. As we turn our attention to the role of private land conservation in protecting Australia's threatened species and ecological communities, it's really important to begin by recognising the unique opportunity that it does present to centre First Nations knowledge and leadership. Privately managed lands can be a powerful pathway for restoring country, for supporting cultural practice and enabling greater First Nations ownership, management and decision making, and I'd like to thank the speakers who have presented really strongly to that today, including Stefina's incredible presentation. We also heard this morning, and again multiple times across yesterday, about the scale of biodiversity loss in Australia. It's well known and expressed, and as James said this morning, we do need to keep telling that story. The scale of the opportunity and the responsibility within privately managed land is not always as strongly communicated or understood. So consider a 2020 analysis found that at least 35% of Australia's threatened species are underrepresented in national parks, with their strongholds on private or Indigenous land. Evans in 2022 showed that more than half of our threatened species occur on privately managed land. And again in 2025, Ward et al. Identified 305 narrow-range critically endangered species, with over half of their habitat found outside the formal protected area estate. So these findings underscore the critical role that private land plays in the survival of Australia's unique species and ecosystems. Take the plains wanderer, a critically endangered bird. Over 90% of its habitat is on private land in southeastern Australia. Or the western swamp tortoise in Western Australia, which depends on targeted management activities of private properties for its survival. From the northern hairy-nosed wombat to the regent honeyeater and the mallee fowl, these species rely on the active stewardship of private landholders and the application of place-based knowledge and care. With more than 60% of Australia under private management, mostly for production, and only around 2% of that land currently permanently protected, there is a clear and an urgent opportunity to scale up the contribution of private protected areas to meet our 30 by 30 targets and to drive the effective management and restoration of nature. So when we talk about strategies for species survival, we must see both private and Indigenous managed lands as essential pillars of our national conservation effort. So today's panel will showcase case studies that demonstrate how private land conservation, when informed by science, grounded in First Nations knowledge and supported by robust policy and partnerships, can be one of the most powerful tools to reverse biodiversity loss and protect Australia's most threatened species. So in this context, private land conservation has the opportunity to draw on diverse ways of knowing and relating to land and water. Ecological science and monitoring combined with First Nations management, science and knowledge can strengthen conservation across different landholder types and contexts. In the Kimberley, Indigenous ranger groups combine cultural burning and species monitoring to protect the northern quoll, an approach grounded in thousands of years of observation and care. In Victoria, the Trust for Nature works alongside traditional owner groups and scientists, for example, to protect habitat for the brush-tailed phascogale. In Queensland, the Australian Wildlife Conservancy's Brooklyn Wildlife Sanctuary provides a refuge for the northern quoll and the Gouldian finch and other threatened savanna species. And down in Tasmania, farmers and conservationists are collaborating to restore the Tasmanian Midlands, one of the most fragmented temperate grasslands on Earth, and it's home to more than 30 threatened species. Policy mechanisms and investment pathways, such as targeted funds and finance, conservation covenants, reintroduction standards, environmental markets and stewardship programs provide the structure and funding needed to support long-term conservation, and we'll hear about some of these through our panel today. So these successes are built on local knowledge, enduring commitment and partnerships that blend science, policy and care for country. They're not isolated examples, but evidence of what is possible when knowledge systems are respected and resourced and when policy listens and enables. By investing in private land conservation, we can expand the conservation estate, fill critical habitat gaps and create landscape connectivity, essential steps for threatened species recovery in the face of habitat loss and climate change. So before we explore the themes that tie all of the work together, we'll hear from 3 incredible case studies, and then we will have time for Q&A about the things that they've covered and the way that we can weave these things together. So, and probably forgot to mention, I'm Jody Gunn, the CEO of the Australian Land Conservation Alliance. We are the peak body representing organisations that protect, manage and restore nature across privately managed lands. And so we'll first hear from Associate Professor and Chief Scientist at Bush Heritage, Hedley Grantham. I'm not going to read everyone's bios out because we want to save time for them to speak, but their bios are on there. They're 3 incredibly experienced and deep, knowledgeable people. So Hedley, I think you're going to be sharing your slides yourself, but let me know if you need me to from here.